Greetings, everybody. Welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of darkness and learn more about another craft of Mage The Ascension? I'm your host and guide, Texnar Van Dracovin. I can lead you into the world of darkness through a gateway. Just remember to tip me, or we leave, by subscribing over the YouTube side of things and letting me know if you've had any encounters or any adventures with our topic of today, the Kopa Loei, the Polynesian mages of Hawaii. Let's get going. The portal opens. We've arrived. Hawaii, in the world of darkness. So much like our own Hawaii, except there's magic beneath the surface. So, if I would be doing deeper research into the Kopa Loei, and again, apologies, Kopa Loei. I'm going to try my best to not mispronounce things terribly, but I'm bad at pronouncing things, so sorry about that if I do. There are 4 books. The one I really recommend is the M20 book, because they're now part of the Disparate Alliance. It gives a really good bit of information about them, pretty well summarized. It's where I did a lot of my kind of information gathering from and where I'm using a lot of my sources. But if you do want to expand beyond there, Book of Crafts, Dead Magic 2, Secrets of Survivors, and Storyteller's Companion all do provide additional information and basics about the Kopa Loei. So who are they? That's a good question to start out with, and it's one of the ones that you really do have to start out with because they are actually one of the oldest of all magical crafts. Not the fact that there aren't studies and ways that are ancient magical, that are deep within other crafts. But the fact is, if we trace back every craft as they are now, they are different incarnations. They are successors. They're things like that. So the Kopa Loei are basically, of themselves, one of the oldest. The kahunas. Now, unfortunately for them, the technocracy has done a lot to destroy them over the last 200 years. And they nearly were destroyed. The fact is that they had always been connected across the Polynesian islands, but they were more scattered. And now their base of operations, their homeland, is just Hawaii. But it is an interesting thing to know that this ancient Polynesian arts are still alive today. And they practice much of the way the same did as their ancestors did. And despite a lot of pressures, they haven't adapted by changing their powder grip. The elders insist that would betray all the work that has been before them. They, in ancient history, would have been priestly and royal castes of a lot of the Polynesian societies. They would have been the elite of the elite. And they would have used their magic for the benefit of the people, lands, and to maintain their social positions. Their law, the kapu, ensures that the abundant natural resources in the islands continue to flourish. And they were the dominant force in many of the local governments of the Polynesian islands for centuries. But yeah, the thousands of years of dominance, gone. With the technocracy coming in, with a lot of the changes that happened, with all the conquests that happened, basically a lot was destroyed. And they've lost so much. And again, though they are currently more Hawaiian than anything, they do believe that all Polynesian people are united. So these are important factors when we look at them. So it's an interesting thing that this ancient history, the original history, is tied to the Polynesian people. The Kanakakahuna, the wizard priests. They bound themselves to the lands, ensured fertility, the rituals. They went along with the Polynesian people as they traveled throughout the Pacific. This is the basic history of them. And most of that history is told through the history of the Polynesian people. It just changes when basically mainlanders, the Haole Kahuna, the chiefs of those not us, basically came into contact with them. The initial was basically trying to have them join their council. Kopa Loei refused. The kahuna had a fear from these tapu nui, the great builders, basically the technocracy. The advanced scouts from the Odyssean branch of the Daedalus explorers found paradises, and what they referred to as saddles. And they used the same tricks that so many did before, things like impersonating gods, basically civilizing these realms, conquesting. And yeah, a lot of the islands fell to disease, servitude, cultural conquest. And the old ways retreated because of convenience, because of Christianity. So the last Kopa Loei that are now have seen the basically centuries of technocracy, rule, and oppression. And they feel it. They really do. It's an unfortunate thing that they do. Today, though, there is some hope, especially in Hawaii. While there are places where tourists and military trades have come into and they ravage some of the sacred and beautiful portions of the islands, there are still Kopa Loei that manage to carve out places the most, free from developers, New Age tourists, where they can work to replenish, rebalance the mana of the land, keep the flora and wildlife all safe. They can create communities where Kanakas, sleeping in a lake and the like, can live as they did the time before. That they follow the laws of the Kapu. That is the way they do now. And again, they do have other opponents, other technocracies. The Keaka Nui, the Nefandi, the Great Shadows, the Poison. So, battles against technocracy, the Great Shadows, are basically what they're doing today. Battling against these forces that still threaten them and the islands in many ways. Their magic, their patagram, focus through the invocation of natural powers. Deities are part of nature. Prayer is a valid approach. Fire and wind are natural powers, can be addressed directly without personification. It's the root of the Hua mana. Forces, spirit, and mana all have natural channels. Rooting those that they don't conflict with natural forces is the core of it. So basically, if they reroute forces, spirit, and mana, they do it in a way that does not interfere with things naturally, the way they would flow. You reroute the way that nature would allow the reroute. They do it with their focuses, but these are time-honored traditions they follow. So, their chants, their melee is an important part of the focus, and top of their cultural historical significance. So, yes. And they don't work with spears as a broad concept, rather a focus on particular talents of a given student. So there are a lot of different focuses that are within their magic that do tend to connect with various spheres. So it's sort of like you focus on something you're very particularly talented for. You might have some other things, but it basically it's a subset of traditional spheres that represent these talents. Let's talk about how they are organized, especially today. So, the Kopa Loei are gathered into loose collections of tugagos, groupings of bloodkin. Again, if I butcher any of these words, apologies, I'm trying my best to pronounce things correctly. And there's anywhere from 2 to 20 members of a given group. Kupuna, elder or mentor, teaches his keki, children. Those aren't official titles, they're more recognized as part of the hierarchy, so it's sort of like you kind of it's the idea of someone that's the elder, the mentor, teaches all the ones below them. Within the group, all Kanaka receive respect. The Kopa Loei aren't acknowledged, don't really acknowledge the nonsense about awakening. Certain Kanakahunas are more attuned and powerful than others. That's it. So there is no difference in their culture with awakening. It's just that some are so more and more attuned, they can do things more because they're more attuned. They're really awakened, but you know, they don't see it that way. There are three traditional specialties though that do exist within them that are important to mention. The Ali'i, the wizard priests who bond the land and specialize in prime. The Kakuna, mage shamans who work a lot of arts. and the often female Heho Okemele Moana, the Wayfinders, who navigate the ocean opens and connect the islands and the various underwater strongholds of the Kanaka Maoli. In the past, the Ali'i basically had the most respect, and with their system of various kapu rules, maintained the prosperity of the islands and the defenses. And the kahuna were also treated with reverence, and the Wayfinders, awaken or not, were the lowest in respect. But however, it's been a juxtaposition basically now. Basically, the Hiho Oke Moana are more respected now because those abilities are important because, hey, they can find unspoiled islands in the explored Pacific. So it's this juxtaposition that the Wayfinders now have much more power, at least in the group dynamic. They are much more respected than they used to be traditionally. Again, it's the traditional roles. Their initiation is very interesting too, because unlike a lot of other traditions, and of course disparate groups, they treat it as basically a private affair between the individual kapuna and keiki. Potential students and initiates are basically all native Polynesians, especially native Hawaiians, of course, because we're focused on Hawaiian. No one that is outside of that allowed. And once you've been selected, their participation in political events, Islander social media, and recommendations from others members kind of figure out who's who. When you're a potential candidate, you basically have to sing your Kananae, the prayer to the gods, providing your connection to the Polynesian people. And basically, it's sort of like you're looked after, you kind of see what you're doing in the society. You know, people are basically pointing you out, and then like it's a much more one of these kapuna will come to you and basically recruit you in a way, initiate you, and your ability to connect with the Polynesian people will show, you know, if you are worthy of that. But yeah, there's the Kopa Loei today. So they are part of the Disparate Alliance. They've joined them. Just as a side note here to finish up, oh, I did forget a little bit of stuff here, so why don't I do that first? I did forget. So, yeah, though some did join with Dream Speakers, most of them now have officially joined the Disparate Alliance. And it is also important to know they are connected to some other creatures in the world of darkness. They have good relations with the Rokea and the Menehune, basically the were-sharks and a type of Polynesian fae. And there are many kinfolk and kinane within the Tapu Loei. So there's a kind of connections and sharing blood, Kadogu, having the same blood as those other two groups, especially the Menehune. So it might not be impossible for someone that's been following the Kapu Loei to basically be a changeling. Or maybe to awaken as a Rokea. Though I would say more kind of akin to the Japanese version of it because of, you know, various things with the Rokea. I'll talk about it today. Anyway, so there you go. There's the Kopa Loei. I did remember to give some extra information there at the end. They're an interesting group because they have maintained their cultural field heavily. They have dealt with a lot and maintained a millennia-old tradition in many ways. It is not impossible to say they may be the oldest craft today. That's traditionally following the craft as it was all the time it was settled. The changes have been so minor, and most of them don't fall outside the patagon. They still uphold their traditions, their rules. They're set in a way of doing things. Their laws. And I think that's a very important way of looking at it too. That they have a set of culture that they have maintained. And even the little bits outside of it are not quite outside of it. You know, it's sort of like, yeah, we talked about where within their organization different people are respected. We're always kind of respected. They were respected lower. You know, the Wayfinders are now looked at much better than they were, basically because they're much more useful there. It wasn't that they didn't have a respect, they just had the least amount, now they have more. And it's a juxtaposition that fits within everything they were. You know, it's who does what's helpful for their people and for their goals of maintaining their culture, their way of lives at the throats of the Nefandi, the technocracy, and anyone else that would destroy their homelands and their ways of life. And that's why they're so fascinating and an interesting group to talk about. And definitely there's a lot of stories you could have for one out there to go on a mission. Maybe someone has done some kind of a Nefandi force has done something threatening in Hawaii, and you're a Kopa Loei that's been sent to basically bring them to justice. And you happen to meet with another group of mages that are also hunting them down and work together with them. And you would have to leave your homeland to do that. The story behind that. Interesting. But that'll be it for today. Please check out the rest of my stuff, whether on Twitch or YouTube. Twitch, I record tabletop stuff. I do gaming. I do stuff. There's a lot of stuff over there. A lot of content. Remember sure to check out my live play, Fall of Abyssal Wednesdays. It's the current one that's ongoing. Discussing tabletop, my talk show, Saturdays at 6. Check out all that stuff. All the tabletop stuff upload on YouTube. Get a VOD channel eventually. Check out my social media down below. And everybody, have a great rest of your day. And make sure to, let me know in the comments after subscribing on YouTube what you think of the Kopa Loei. Let me know if you have an interesting character concept for one. All right, everybody. Farewell.